an item from the beginning of Inuyasha?
Yes.
And the island of Horai is referenced in the 12 Kingdoms because the center island in the middle is called Mount Horai. It's also an island.
Oh, wow.
All right, next paragraph.
Is that me?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Realizing that it was an impossible task, the first prince returned with an expensive bowl. But after noticing that the bowl did not glow with holy light, Kaguya-hime saw through his deception. Likewise, 2 other princes attempted to deceive her with fakes, but also failed. The storm, while the final prince lost his life, really injured.
After this, the Emperor of Japan, Mikado, came to see the strangely beautiful Kaguya-hime, and upon falling in love, asked her to marry him. Although he was not subjected to the impossible trials that had thwarted the princes, Kaguya-hime rejected his request for marriage as well, telling him that she was not of his country, and thus could not go to the palace with him. She stayed in contact with the Emperor, but continued to rebuff his requests.
That summer, when Kaguya-hime saw the full moon, her eyes filled with tears. Though her adopted parents worried greatly and questioned her, she was unable to tell them what was wrong. Her behavior became increasingly erratic until she revealed that she was not of this world and must return to her people on the moon. In some versions of this tale, it is said that she was sent to Earth as a temporary punishment for some crimes, while others say it was safety during a celestial war.
As the day of her return approached, the emperor set many guards around her house to protect her from the moon people. But when an embassy of heavenly beings arrived at the door of the Taketori no Okina's house, the guards were blinded by a strange light. Kaguya-hime announced that, though she loved her many friends on Earth, she must return with the moon people to her true home. She wrote sad notes of apology to her parents and to the emperor. She then took a small taste of the elixir of life, attached it to her letter to the emperor, and gave it to a guard officer. As she handed it to him, the feather robe was placed on her shoulders, and all of her sadness and compassion for the people of Earth were forgotten. The heavenly entourage took Kaguya-hime back to Suki no Miyako, the capital of the moon, leaving her earthly foster parents in tears.
The parents became very sad and were soon put to bed sick. The officer returned to the emperor with the items Kaguya-hime had given him and as her last moral act, and reported what had happened. The emperor read the letter and was overcome with sadness. He asked his servants, "Which mountain is the closest place to heaven?" To which one replied, "The great mountain of Suguya of Suruga province." The emperor ordered his men to take the letter to the summit of the mountain and burn it, in the hope that his message would reach the distant princess. The men were also commanded to burn the elixir of immortality, since the emperor did not wish to live forever without being able to see her. The legend has it that the word immortality, or Fuji, became the name of the mountain, Mount Fuji. It is also said that the kanji for the mountain, literally, some note that we don't need to know, is derived from the emperor's army ascending the slopes of the mountain to carry out his order. It is also said that the smoke from the burning still rises to this day. In the past, Mount Fuji was a more active volcano.
Yeah.
So this story essentially, very interesting, but it also tells you where Mount Fuji got its name and references Mount Fuji as a volcanic mountain.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we also have the other one, and I'm just going to kind of highlight it because I actually think it's the most. It actually tells like a moral story, and that's the Stonecutter.
Mm-hmm.
The Stonecutter is a story about a man who cuts stone for a living, and he's unhappy with his lot in life after seeing the home of a very rich person whom he's delivering a slab of stone for a grave. And there is this, I'll call it like a magic genie or something type of thing, and that grants him that will grant you wishes. And the spirit basically, he says that he wants to be very wealthy, right? But even though he's wealthy and he has his umbrella, etc., he's still overcome by the power of the sun and becomes tan. And as we know from Japanese culture, being tan means that you're a peasant and you're working out in the fields, and that's not what you want. You want to be very pale looking. And so he's like, "Oh, drat! I wish I was strong like the sun." and so the spirit makes him the sun, and then subsequently he gets frustrated because the clouds block out his rays, and so he wishes to be a cloud, and subsequently he gets frustrated because the rain from his clouds cannot destroy the rocks on the earth, right? So he wishes to be a rock, only to realize that when he was a man, he was cutting rocks in the first place, and so he wishes to be a man once again, and essentially learns to be happy and live with his lot in life, and not be too overcome by what he doesn't have. So the moral is basically to be happy with what you have in life and not worry about it. So.
One of the other things that I wanted to make sure was mentioned too before we kind of get into our final story is someone mentioned in the chat, and I forgot who because it was a little while ago, but when we were starting the topic, they mentioned the fact that they were wondering if, some of the stuff that you see in anime, if, it actually is rooted in folklore.
Heavy influence.
And I think we already touched on that some by just seeing in the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter some of the influence there. But the short answer is yes. A lot of the Yomu come from various lore. For example, the Buddhist Hell Scrolls, something that is way before Common Era. Those have some of the first and earliest depictions of Oni and
devils.
Yeah, devils, and that's kind of where we get our modern day depiction of kind of how they look. But one worth mentioning that I just love because I forgot what it was from. It was part of a series of like little short vignettes made by famous directors that I watched when I was living in Japan and taking that class on anime. But one that a lot of people really like is, of course, the kitsune, or the fox spirits. And the fox was considered one of the rain spirits and a messenger of Inari, the rice god, so very important. And the fox also symbolizes longevity and protection from evil. But it's really interesting because the fox is so like highly respected. Sometimes they are perceived as having like illusionary magic, and will make themselves look like beautiful women to seduce men and things like that. But one of my favorite stories, and it was the short story in the movie, is basically a child was out playing in the woods, and he happened to catch a glimpse of a kitsune wedding procession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the kitsune, of course, were aware that he saw it, and he went home and he told his mother, I saw the kitsune wedding procession, and his mother said, well, and literally in this thing, this mother hands this like 8-year-old a knife, like that, like a foot or so, not a foot, like 6 inches, 8 inches long, and she hands him a knife and goes, you know what to do, and then puts him outside the door and closes the door. And basically it's that because he saw the kitsune wedding procession, he had to either kill himself or go to the kitsune and beg them for their forgiveness. And
foolish mortal.
And normally the kitsune end up killing you anyway, just because they're pissed. And so
well, it's not his fault.
In the movie, it's never resolved. He decides to go off and try to beg for forgiveness from the kitsune. And I don't know. I'm not caught up on all lore. I'd like to think that sometime the kitsune, because they are kind of that like chaotic neutral, I'd say, type being, where I'm sure they do let some people go, but yeah. So kitsune, fun stuff. And I think I just remember the name of those short stories. So talk while I look something up.
Okay. So the last thing I wanted to mention, and I think it's really important, and there's innumerable stories from the Shinto religion, but one of the most important stories from the Shinto religion is the story of Izanagi and Izanami, which are basically the two gods that essentially gave birth to Japan and the world They're the celestial gods, the number 1A, right, of the Shinto religion. Basically, what happens is that the two marry, and I believe that Izanagi is either one of their names is the name of the persona of the main character from Persona 4. Did you find the name of your book?
I did. It's actually not a book, and the reason why I remembered it and the reason why we watched it is because it was made by Akira Kurosawa. And
there you go.
It's called Akira Kurosawa's Dreams. It was made in 1990, and it's not anime. It's a live action film, but it was based off of actual dreams of Akira Kurosawa's at different stages in his life. And the first one is called Sunshine Through the Rain, and that's about, the kitsune. So if you want to watch it, it's kind of a little bit of a metaphorical head trip.
You should watch it anyway because Akira Kurosawa is amazing.
Yeah. Akira Kurosawa and I make mad films. Okay, I don't make films, but if I did, they'd have a samurai.
Right. Very nice. Nice reference.
Thanks.
Those of you listening, you're going to notice that a lot of these names are found in various video games. I would just tell you 3 games right now. Anything from the Shin Megami Tensei series, particularly Persona.
Yeah.
Also, the game Okami for the PS2 and Wii, I guess, if you count the Wii as a system. I don't. Burn! Oh,
Ouch.
Snap! Basically, okay, so Izanami and Izanagi are the two celestial gods of the heavens for the Shinto religion. Together they are the creators of the Japanese islands. And it's important to note that at the time that this folklore was written, Japan was basically all that was known of the known world. Okay? And that doesn't even include Hokkaido and Ryukyu. They weren't even discovered yet. So, they created Japan, but according to the Shinto religion, Japan is the world. So, basically, these two, they're basically
the
creators
most
of the
ancient
world.
religions,
Right.
We are the center of the universe.
Yes, exactly. And they actually say that in the article, that Japan is considered the center of the world.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is that the two make love, and they're trying to have a child. You nodding your head in approval?
Boom boom.
They're making the boom boom, and their attempt at mating, it's actually their second attempt, but the first attempt isn't really important to note, because it was a failure. Create the 8 largest islands of Japan, and the bubbles and the consequent bubbles from that create in the ocean gave rise to the smaller islands and the foreign lands. The next birth that Izanami is the woman, the female. Izanami gives birth to a fire god, Kagutsuchi.
Speaking of Shin Megami Tensei.
Kagutsuchi is a nocturne. It's actually the name of the sun that has the phases.
Yeah.
So you'll note that. Essentially, what happens is that Izanami is killed in the birth because she's burned to death by the fire god. Okay, you have a god of fire coming out of your womb. Not pleasant.
Kind of like a vampire. That is the only Twilight reference I will ever make in my entire life.
All right. You may now not talk for the next 5 minutes. I'm timing it. I'm timing it.
I only like it because he rips it out with his teeth, and I wanted her to die.
Okay, you're done. I'm timing it. So what happens is that Izanagi, he mourns the loss of his lover, right? And what he does is that he kills Kagutsuchi with a sword, and the pieces of Kagutsuchi become gods, and the splattered blood from the killing become the Milky Way galaxy. He cuts Kagutsuchi's body into 8 pieces, which become 8 volcanoes on Japan, because he's a fire god. Get it? So we're creating. We now have the islands and the volcanoes and the subsequent islands around the main islands.
And the Milky Way.
The blood and the Milky Way. The god the blood that dripped off the sword created a number of deities, including the sea god Watatsumi and the rain god Kuraokami. So we now have the ocean and the rain. The tears that he mourned his lover also become more deities. I think I already said that. Kagutsuchi's birth in Japanese mythology comes at the end of creation of the world and marks the beginning of death. because it's the first mention of death in the Shinto religion, Izanami's death. What happens is that Izanagi actually goes to Yomi, the underworld, to retrieve his lover. I believe that there's a Greek mythology on this as well.
Yeah,
I can never remember
Orpheus, or I think it's Orpheus and
Eurydice. He goes down, and basically Izanami cannot come back with him.
That's so funny that like two different cultures, thousands of miles apart, come up with like the same kind of like verbatim practically.
She falls asleep in according to this text, she falls asleep at one point, and he creates a source of light and sees her decaying body, freaks out and leaves and declares that he will divorce her even though she's already dead. She gets mad and says that she will take 1,000 lives away from the earth every year. And in response, Izanagi replies that he will give life to 1,500 beings per year. And thus we have the ever-growing population of the earth. So now we have growing populations. Seeing the taint of the underworld, Izanagi seeks to purify himself. And he plunges himself into a river, and as he bathes, goddesses are basically born from his body. From his left eye, the goddess Amaterasu, whom we all know from numerous things, comes forth. And from his right eye, Tsukiyomi, and from his nose, the god Susanoo. Amaterasu is the sun goddess of the Shinto religion. Tsukiyomi is the Shinto deity that rules over the night sky and the moon. And Susanoo is the god of the restless seas. And so thus we have a large portion of the creation of the earth.
Yeah.
And there's a ton. I mean, we could not possibly cover all of this.
And when he sneezed, that's how the dinosaurs were made.
There's individual folklores for Amaterasu, Tsukiyomi, Susanoo, Kuraokami, Watatsumi, Yomi, and all of the others, but obviously we can't cover that there because each of those is going to have like 4 more gods in them. And
really, I'm a huge theology person myself. I love researching religion. I love researching how religions have evolved over time and like how they've influenced politics and how the world has influenced them. So I mean, I'd have to say, if you're interested in what we've talked about tonight at all, just start Googling, like, the history of Shinto, and just see what you can find.
I'm pulling up the name of this text. A.B. Mitford, Tales of Old Japan, published in 1871, but I'm guessing you can find the book somewhere.
Probably. It might even be on, like, Google Books, since it's so old, but still, like, historical. It might be, like, public and easy to find.
There's also... That book has over 200 pages, so it has lots of tales from Japan in it. Also, the Crimson Fairy book by Andrew Lang has tales in it that you can read. Myths and Legends of Japan, written by F. Hadlin Davis in 1917. It also has a... large amount of tales in it. All these books seem like they have a lot of pages, but if you look up any of those that I just listed, you probably have at least some interesting reading material to get you started.
Well, I'm sure probably a lot of them are a lot of pages, but kind of like the tale of the bamboo cutter. It might only take up the span of 2 pages, so it might be a really easy read. So, I like it. I liked this topic. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I wish we could cover more of it, but this is the kind of thing that you would take a whole college course on and still cover 5% of it.
And still not cover nearly... There is a reason why people can be religion majors in some colleges.
Yeah.
And specialize only in one religion.
So, I hope you guys enjoyed the topic. Maybe we'll do it again. God knows there's enough.
Funny.
God knows that there's enough lore out there that we could have a whole year of podcast episodes on it. But we just covered some of the important areas, But for now, we're going to take a quick news break, and when we come back, we have 3 reviews for you, all requested by the forum, so stay tuned, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Hey, all you listeners out there, enjoying your summer with your own beach day episode? This is Chiaki, and this is your anime news break. First up, the North American magazine Otaku USA has recently announced that a digital edition is now available of its August 2012 issue. The bi-monthly publication is the only regularly published North American anime magazine on newsstands. If you're interested in taking a look at this digital edition, it's available from Apple's iTunes and App Store or from the Pocket Mag's website on multiple platforms. In some merchandise news, the Kensen Production Company's Art of War store has recently announced that it will re-release a popular statue of the main character Guts from Kentaro Miura's Berserk manga. Art of War will re-release Guts, the Battle for Doldry 1/10 scale statue at the end of July or early August 2012. The company has added several artistic details to this version of the statue, using a level of reproduction skill it notes was not available 15 years ago when the statue was originally released. Shading has been added to the statue's mantle, and dust effects have been added to the statue's body, outfit, horse, armor, and helmet. In addition, a different shade of silver was used to create the armor and give it a more realistic sheen, and blood was added to Guts' body and sword. The statue will retail for about 60,000 yen, which is about a little over 750 US dollars, and is a part of a limited set of 100. The statue looks beautiful, it's clearly a work of art, and clearly you have to be a pretty serious collector to purchase it. And in some merchandise news that it will be sure to please some of you gamers out there, the video game accessory developer Hori has recently announced that it will release a new Dragon Quest Slime keyboard on August 2nd, designed to be paired with the Dragon Quest X Meizameshi Itsusu no Shuzoku online game for the Nintendo Wii and Wii U. The keyboard will offer players an easier way to chat with the other players in game. Dragon Quest X is the first online game in the Square Enix series. The keyboard features Slime, a recurring mascot monster from the franchise, and the official licensed peripheral will retail for only 3,980 yen, which is about $51, a much more reasonable price than a $700-something statue. It also includes 12 miniature slime figures on each of the function keys. All keys are printed with a pixelated dot font in homage to the in-game text. Sounds like something that might be a little bit frivolous of a purchase, but fun nonetheless. This was Chiaki, and this was your Anime News Break. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back to the show soon.
Dearly beloved, let us bow our heads and pray. For on this day he hath come, and he hath built a Facebook page, so that we can smite Italia cosplayers, send them to the layers of hell to be with Man-Fae and the Moe characters, and we can show people the light of true anime wisdom. Amen. If you would like to hear these words and more every day, join the Church of Mitsugi on Facebook. Facebook.com/Church of Mitsugi. Amen.
And we're back again with the 136th episode of the Anime Addicts Anonymous podcast. Boom. 3 anime reviews.
It just seemed like it was only 135 episodes was only yesterday. Or, yeah, I said that right.
Yeah, although that was 3 years ago. Haha!
I know.
So, we have 3 reviews, as I said. We're going to start with the Yaoi review to force you all to listen to it before we get to the other reviews. We'll probably do Chiaki's review last, since I have a feeling it's probably the best of the 3 shows.
Yay, butt sex.
It's called...
Oh, wait. It's fitting that we have our butt pirate here.
Oh, the butt pirate is in the chat to observe the anime about butt sex.
You're welcome.
It's Winter Cicada. What is this anime about?
Okay, so it's a 3-part yaoi story of awesome, or moderately awesome, that spans the war that's between the war-torn era when the Japanese turned from a shogunate to the world. So
so it's about the Meiji Revolution. That's the right period.
I feel like that is involved, but it's mostly about their like transition into kind of Western feel, at least in terms of like imports and exports, and accepting the fact that the rest of the world is gonna eventually kind of become a part of their general civilization. It was interesting. It felt very historical to me, even though I know absolutely nothing about history. But it was interesting enough that it kept my attention the entire time. So, but it focuses primarily around 2 people of separate clans around 1862. So they're 2 clans that don't really associate with each other very well. And, I mean, they would even be considered, like, the dividing force in Japan at that point, the 2 separate areas that are at war with each other. And the 2 people from within those 2 clans end up falling in love, and they
like butt sex?
Like butt sex a lot.
Oh.
They actually end up, I guess, giving themselves to each other before one of them, the person involved in the, I want to say it's the Choshu clan. Yes, the Choshu clan. Ends up going to London because he's one of the few in the Choshu clan who believes that Western influence in their culture is a good thing. And
you had to have like an Asian studies minor
about it to bring back knowledge for the rest of his clan to prove to them that it's a good thing and such. And when he returns, they're in the middle of a war between the Choshu and the Bakufu, which are the shogunate samurai. And huge war that actually is being run by the guy that the Choshu clan member is in love with. And it's ridiculous. It's weird. They try to keep this love story going on between them, and they do a pretty decent job, but mostly it just feels like a big history lesson in this, and I suppose that gives it a little bit of merit because they definitely do their research for this one. And even though I don't know much about historical Japanese war periods and eras, I feel like I did learn a lot about what was going on, at least in the area of the 1860s, because they go back a couple of years into the past, around like 1856, 1857, and then all the way up to 1869, I believe. And they talk a lot about the different clans and how they were affected, how some of them were very stuck in their ways in that period, and how the mostly the Bakufu clans or the shogunate samurai clans were very pro-Western society and influenced by the Western influence and such. And how it really tore those 2 pieces of Japan apart. And how it really tore their love apart. And all in all, it ended up being a really, really sad OVA. So there are only 3 episodes of it. And by the end of it, it's very bittersweet because a lot of stuff has changed in that time between clans or these families in Japan, and it ends up